it's hard to believe that 2 years after I lost the greatest thing in my life, I get this opportunity. So I'm lucky as hell. I'm very flattered. I get emotional talking about it. But I'm back in the game is the bottom line. I didn't want to sit home anymore. And AEW was willing to give me an opportunity to play again and do what I do, for better or for worse, So I'm happy. I'm excited to be back in it.
Well, you talk about getting emotional. I got a little emotional in the latest edition of Countdown to Double or Nothing when Cody comes to your home and they had that sit-down interview with you. And I got goosebumps when you said in that video that, hey, you've got something to prove.
I do.
And do you feel that way?
Yeah, every day. It's you grow up with the insecurities as a performer. Everybody involved, you, Dave, and Bubba, we all had insecurities performing. Was that match good enough? Is this going to be okay? Our styles going to clash? I don't really have anything good for the show today. Maybe somebody will get some good calls, whatever. We all have our insecurities, and I'm not any different. And mine came from a business that was changing without my control, where my look and my sound and my lack of the ability to smile started becoming an issue. And as the other issue that you can't control whatsoever either is Father Time. So the perception of JR getting older, he's lost this, lost that, that was somebody else's opinion. I didn't play or get back on the air because I didn't want. I was booked, but I didn't want to go. You know what I mean? They booked me, as indicated by doing the pregame show in Saudi Arabia. Figure that one out. That's a long flight for 20 minutes of work. So I just wanted to play again, and I wanted to get out of and go get after it. And I don't know where this is going to go, man. There's some really exciting young kids in this deal. Right now, the honeymoon period's on. They're selling this out and selling that out. And T-shirts are growing great, and this is doing good, and it all's true. But you can't say that's always going to be that way. You got to lay a foundation. You got to build for it, and you got to put your team together. And that's kind of what I'm trying to help do as best I can in my role.
You said that you have something to prove, and this is really interesting to me because 2 weeks ago, Jericho was on the show with us, and Jericho probably the biggest free agent in-ring talent signing, yep. And that was his exact answer. So Chris Jericho and Jim Ross, two names synonymous with the WWE, both give the same answer, something to prove. Does this have anything to do with you're not in the WWE anymore? Do you need to prove this to Vince, or do you need to prove this to yourself?
Well, that's a good question and a very good observation because both sides of that argument are applicable. Probably to myself most of all because I've got to hang around me. So, and I'll never be happy with what you hear. I want to do better. It's always been that way. I'm insecure in that respect. I want to be the best. And you're only as good as your last broadcast, no matter what anybody says. So, but a little to Vince. I think it's not so much Vince because Vince has been very pro me making this move. He's been very positive about this. We've communicated a lot, probably more in the last month or so than we have. And unfortunately, my fault in months. So, but I want to make sure. I like to make him proud. I learned a lot working for the guy. When you're in charge of that talent roster, and it's what we built there, Bubba, you're a big part of that. I'm proud of that roster. I'm proud of what we did together. It was a team effort, and I always treated you guys like you're athletes and not performers.
True.
So I wanted you to go get your working clothes on in the locker room, not the dressing room. So
makes sense.
And men like to, and athletes like to be treated like athletes because they work their ass off to become a great athlete. So give them some accolades and treat them like one. So I hope that I'm able to do a little bit of that with AEW. But my primary goal is going to be to broadcast.
It's funny hosting this show, and Bully, you could probably add to this as well. Hosting this show, even though it's the vocal minority, a lot of times once the show is over, the first thing I do is go on social media, go on Twitter to see what the reaction is from the fans about the show. And I can get hundreds of tweets about how good the show was, but it'll be the one or two tweets that say that the show was awful. And that's what I'm thinking about on my ride home that day. Is it the same thing with you?
Yeah. And I and when I was younger and when Twitter was newer, social media in general was new, mm-hmm. It pissed me off. I was like a little kid, And so because of that, there's a lot of pro wrestling insecurities. If you hadn't noticed our little group here, sometimes we can be a little insecure and paranoid. I raising my hand, me included, and probably most of all. But I look at that, but it doesn't affect me so much anymore. I know that there's going to be some people, just like when I was doing New Japan on Access TV in a voiceover situation where we're sitting here like the three of us are here, and there's the monitor, and you go call the match. Well, there's something a little bit different than being in Cork and Hall or being on the road or being around fans when you're sitting in a closet calling the show. And it was a nice closet, and it was a nice monitor, but it's still sterile. Mm-hmm. And then some people thought, because I did mispronounce some names, my fault, that I didn't give a shit. Sorry, I didn't care. And so I did care, but I was new in it. And it wasn't like we're getting volumes of help from New Japan on how, information. I wasn't even supposed to go through they said, make sure the announcers don't go into the locker room. Seriously? I've been doing this since the 70s. I can't go in the locker room? I said, I don't know why I'd want to go in the locker room, to be honest with you, but it's good to know I can't go there. So it's just a backward thing, and I just, but I think some people criticize my work there because of that, and it's not indicative of what I can do. It's just a different deal. It's just, this is going to be right down my alley. I have been assured it's going to be some hard-hitting, logical pro wrestling. I don't know what that exactly means, Bubba, Dave, but that's why I signed on.
Can you clear something up for us? I think yesterday, AEW, the day before, said that your job would not be primarily as a commentator. You saying your job will be as a commentator.
Well, they're going to get all the fruit. They're going to squeeze all the juice out of the fruit that they can. They're going to use me in every way possible as far as getting things organized and getting their infrastructure with all those VPs they got. I was kidding Cody about that. I said, how many VPs you guys got now? Like 4, 5, 8? I didn't want to be a VP. I could have been a VP. I didn't want to be a VP. I don't care about that. So I said, I'll be senior advisor. I'll help as many guys as I can. So I think that the Tony Khan is depending on me to be kind of, like this. Remember when we talked about gravy? Gravy in the Sopranos?
Sure.
And Bubba thought I was talking about, because I couldn't be talking about real Italian gravy. Sauce, baby. He was talking about that country gravy and those biscuits. So, but the kind of conciliary guy,
yep.
Yeah, that kind of role. Where you can kind of help him on a lot of things that are new to him. Now, he's a bright son of a gun now. He's a kid's really smart. But new experiences, you need a kind of a GPS that ain't going to BS you.
On yesterday's show, my exact sentiment was, I believe, obviously you bring a lot to the table behind the booth, but you could do that with your eyes closed. We know JR is going to turn in a phenomenal performance, tell some great stories, and add credibility to every performer. But I think you are going to be so much more valuable backstage to Tony Khan, because you've been there, you've done that with every company. You know anything that could be possibly thrown at them from a business perspective, and you being the head of talent relations, when I was there, I saw how you dealt with talent. I saw how you dealt with ownership and management, and JR's way is probably the best way, because there was zero bullshit. There was no small talk. There was no trimming of the fat. He did try to fire Dreamer, which is like trimming the fat. But it was, here's the deal. It's like, Bubba, here's the deal, blah, blah, blah. And wrestlers appreciate when management is to the point, and JR was always like that. And I think that's where you're going to be the biggest help to that company.
And the older I've gotten, the more I'm apt to be that way. It's just no sense. We don't have time to BS each other. And I understand the psyche of a wrestler, of a performer in this case. If they took more of a, like yourself, I'd rather you think more like an athlete, a tough guy. I need a goddamn defensive tackle, Bubba. I don't need you to go do ballet. Sorry, that ain't your body type. Mm-hmm. I need a goddamn defensive tackle that could get some penetration. Can you get some penetration, Bubba?
Oh, trust me, I can get some penetration.
See there, another one.
Yeah, you're throwing them out there.
Straight down the left field line.
This is like beer league softball, for crying out loud. He's knocking them out of the park. But you said like squeezing, the juice out of the fruit. I can understand that. If I'm Tony Khan and I'm having a conversation with Cody Rhodes about Jim Ross, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, why would I want to put just one hat on somebody like Jim Ross? I'm going to try to get you can't find somebody more knowledgeable about the sport of pro wrestling than Jim Ross. So I'm going to try to get as much out of you as I possibly can. Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it keeps me busy. I want to be. Hey, that's why I signed up. I'm back in the game here. Whatever you need for me to do, I'll do. And I'm looking forward to helping. See, I'm a big mentor guy. I've mentored a lot of football players at OU, and all, of course, within the confines of the NCAA rules, of course, because God knows you wouldn't want to offend the NCAA. And by actually mentoring a kid, that, seriously, I'll deviate for this long. I can't spend my time one-on-one with a football player talking about life goals and guys I've signed and how guys have motivate themselves, how they change their body sometimes, they change their attitude sometimes, general life experiences that I've actually been involved in. I can't do that because it's a asset that can't be accounted for money-wise. So if you can't do it for the whole school, you can't do it for the defensive tackle. That's the stupidest damn thing I've ever heard in my life. So you're gonna push away a mentor because of your rule. And I don't understand the value of the rule. I'm not paying a guy to come. Mm-hmm. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not paying you to come sit on my couch. In reverse. So, but I want to be around these young guys, and it's good for my energy. I think I can help them a little bit. I think the business largely is overthought. I think the fundamental things that we've got to stress again are important. You have to learn how to sell. It's an art form. It's not a requirement in the sense that it is a requirement, but it's an art form. And people look at it as a sign of weakness, and that's the last thing it is. I've seen your big 300-pound ass sell all the time. It makes the match better. You get your stuff over, because then when you get a comeback, what's it mean?
It means everything.
Everything. It's everything. So, but you got to take them on that ride, and that's one of the things to be challenging, to get some of these cats to slow down a little bit, so you can register some of the great things that you're doing. I can't process all the things you're doing, and they're good, but there are just too many of them.
But JR, what makes you think that the athletes and the talent in AEW are going to be the type of wrestlers that want to slow down?
They might not be. I'm not saying that they are. I don't know if they are. I may be a pushback on my side. And I don't have a problem with that either. I can prove my point to be right. I can help them improve their matches psychologically if you incorporate selling at some points in time and staying away from the eye-rolling bullshit. Be real. And I know they're going to have some. There's a lot of charismatic guys, other little bits, and their comedy. I don't have a problem with that, but don't have the comedy bell to bell. I don't even want them to interrupt the matches to go to commercial break. If it was a legitimate sporting event, well, it's the bottom of the second. Yankees up 2-3. We'll be right back. What? Here comes the Mick, but we'll be right back. Nobody would do that, So. It's an expose. Same as not having time limits. How can you have a sporting event that has no time limit? Are you kidding?
All things that make logical sense.
Yeah. There you go.
And bringing back that competitive spirit to pro wrestling as well, which in a lot of ways I think has been gone. You mentioned about this is the honeymoon period for AEW. We just saw AAF just go under 7 games into the season. It's unbelievable. And this is that started off really, really hot. The ratings were hot for the first couple of weeks. When you look at that, and we can get into the XFL later, but when you look at the AAF, just in terms of like AEW, does that make you a little nervous? Yeah, you're hot to start, but you got to maintain that through a long period of time.
Well, maintaining is not a surprise, Dave. That's just something. Every promotion, after you come off a big run or whatever, maintaining momentum is key. That was always one of the big points of discussion in my WWE days. Is how do we come out of Mania with some momentum, and where is that momentum going to come from? So what ideas do we have to come out of here with some momentum, with something that's tangible and that people want to see? That was always the issue. But yeah, you got to maintain the momentum, and the way you do that is to have a good product. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I love football, as you guys know. I didn't watch any of those games, and I don't know why. It just didn't come across my screen at the right place, at the right time. So, but no, I'm not worried about the Khan family. Is not undercapitalized. Mr. Khan, I think, is worth about $8.4 billion, and as long as they keep making car bumpers and own the Jaguars and the Fulham soccer team in the UK, they're in good shape. So, no, I'm not worried about it. The thing is, you have to worry to some degree. You have to be concerned or curious, maybe the best word of all. If they don't have great success in X number of months, will they say, okay, it was a failed experiment, it didn't work, we're going to cash in, cut our losses, and get out? I don't know that. I don't think that's going to happen because as we've discussed with Tony, it's not an overnight deal here. You're looking at a couple of years to get your bearings, go through some talents, take care of your roster. Who are you going to get to coach? See, I would rather not have any producers and no writers and have coaches. I need mentors to coach these guys up and to help them have better matches in a safe, logical environment.
The last person to give Vince McMahon a run for his money was Ted Turner because of the money that he had. We don't know if AEW is going to take off product-wise. We can assume that they're going to. They have a great roster, great foundation. So if the product catches fire, if they get their TV deal, if they get their product out to the masses, it's most likely going to do well. Do you think this is the first time Vince is a little concerned that he has to go head-to-head with somebody that has his money?
Bubba, I don't know that he's concerned about going head-to-head with anybody.
I'm talking about financially, though.
Yeah, I doubt it. I think he's bulletproof in that regard. And I've said this internally with AEW. The worst mistake we can make is trying to chase WWE. Because its view's the same. You're looking up their ass. I don't need to chase WWE. We don't need to chase WWE. You can't catch them.
I'm not talking about product-wise, JR. I'm saying about making a play for a talent. So if WWE has a top talent and they offer them $1 million, now Tony Khan can turn around and say, I'll offer you $1.1 million. Yeah. And not since Eric Bischoff threw around Ted Turner's money, did Vince have that, competition? Mm-hmm. That's my specific question.
That's a good point. I'm sure there's concern there. I heard the other day, someone told me in a meeting, because I was asking about some talents. I'm not officially in that department, but, I'm a senior advisor. So I'm going to advise. I'm going to stick my nose into where it doesn't belong, but at least I'll give my opinion. I asked about one guy in WWE who was an undercard guy, been there a while, solid hand, could help the younger guys learn because he's at that age now, early 30s. And they said, well, he's not available. He just signed for $500,000. He's not even on television. $500K, Bubba.
Yep.
Just to keep him off the street, so to speak. So, yeah, I would think there's a reactionary phase of this deal that, hey, these guys got some cash and they're willing to pay people.
JR, I have to say this. I think you do a wonderful job with the Jim Ross Report. I listen every single Wednesday when the show drops, and you've been very, very kind to this show as well. You always mention Bully and I and Mark on Busted Open, so I really, really appreciate that.
Well, two of my guys, Coach Switzer told me having some drinks the other day. He said, I don't know how you are with your guys, but when I recruit them for life. And you kind of get that. You kind of want that. I want that because I'm a widower, empty nester, right? So these relationships, these big guys are big to me. They're like kids, my buddies, my nephews, my sons, whatever. And I've always looked at it that way. That's why I always treat these guys like jocks and not opera singers or acrobats.
Makes sense. I like what you said about it's not a dressing room, it's a locker room.
That's how I see it.
Dave, I've told you the story before. I'll tell it real quick. Here was the negotiation with JR when he was head of talent relations when me and Devon first started. He said, boys, I was thinking about offering you this much. And it was a nice offer. And we said, JR, we think we're worth this. And JR said, why don't we just cut it in half and call it a day? Done. That was the first negotiation of our WWE contract. 30 seconds, JR, right?
Yeah. We're finished. Let's go to catering. Celebrate with cake.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that's how to the point and direct he was. And, wrestling negotiations and business negotiations can be so draining at times.
Yeah.
And they weren't with him. And that's why, I'll always speak highly of him on how direct he is. Sometimes he was a prick. Right?
Yeah.
But you had to be.
That was my role.
Was your job. The job of talent relations is probably one of the most difficult, jobs in the world, because he works for Vince, but you also have to make an entire locker room and roster happy.
Well, see, this leads to my next question, and maybe I'm going to sound like a 47-year-old man asking this question, but, JR, going to, a bully and telling him, hey, whether you like it or not, this is what's happening.
Well,
it's a little bit of a different athlete in today's world. I mean, Bully, I think you can agree with that. Do you think that you could still have that same direct approach with the athlete now?
if you're respectful, you can. If you're not trying to be overbearing or a bully, because you got a little stroke in the office, you got a title. Now, if you're respectful and honest, that's how I'm going to be anyway. It's just upfront and respectful and honest, and it's the old Jack Nicholson thing. I hope you can handle the truth, because that's what you're going to get from me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be BS, go to work for an indie promotion, and work for 10 promoters. Because I guarantee if you work for 10 different promoters, there's a good chance that 8 of them are going to lie to you. Unfortunately, I'm not knocking all indie promoters. Don't get me wrong, but it's just the nature of our beast. But I don't have. Again, it's all about presentation, Dave. It's like I used to tell guys. I probably have told this to Bubba. If you're going to go see the old man in his office at TV when you know he's busy as hell, then I would suggest one thing: always converse. Do not confront, because you will lose, and I will be having to show you out the back door, because he will call me, get rid of that guy. So now you can be mad at me because I'm the one that actually told you you're done, even though I was following the orders of the commanding officer. There's a lot of guys in the wrestling business that are pissed at me to this very day, probably because either I fined them or we let them go. I never let anybody go by saying to Vince, Vince, by the way, I fired Bubba and Devon. I would never do that with anybody, because it may affect creative, and that was his baby.
Yeah.
He liked me doing talent relations because it was all the grunt work, and I was fine with it. I loved it. But he liked the creative side of it, so you can't take any of his toys away from him. So he may have had an idea for Bubba and Devon at SummerSlam that he hadn't told me, but now they're gone because of my own stupidity. So I didn't do that. So all guys that got canned, Vince canned them. I just was the message boy, so to speak. I delivered the bad news.
And what JR was doing back in the day is that he was holding guys and gals accountable. And I don't think there's as much accountability in the wrestling business today. I think that the younger generation just thinks that they can get away with whatever they want to get away with and not have to apologize or be reprimanded for it. And you need accountability in the wrestling business, in life, in any business.
Right.
And the accountability in the WWE, obviously when JR was there, but was Vince McMahon. But people don't realize that when the last person you see before you go out in that arena is Vince McMahon. The first person you see when you come back through the curtain is Vince McMahon. And at any given moment, he will put that gun to your head and hold you accountable for everything that you did.
Yeah, absolutely, as it should. He's paying guys a lot of money. Hey, for this guy, I would not embarrass him by saying his name, but if you knew who's getting $500,000 just to stay off the street, hey, I'm happy for that guy. Good for him, man. That's money that the NWA champion didn't make back in the day. You know what I mean? Seriously, that's big money. It's big money now to me.
JR, you said that you weren't afraid to answer any question, and here's a difference in opinion when it comes to the mentality of pro wrestling. I've given Cody and the Bucks all the credit in the world to have the balls to go out and do what they did, and they bet on themselves. They went all in on themselves. Cody has gone on record to say that in 2019, in pro wrestling moving forward, he doesn't believe in heels and baby faces or traditional heels and baby faces. I know you are the exact opposite. You believe that every wrestler needs to have a foundation in love or hate, be a heel or a baby face. How do you think you're going to be able to work with guys who have such a different view on the business as you.
Well, I'm hoping that Cody and I, because I have great respect for him, and like I said earlier during a break, known him since he was a child, and his dad and I were great friends. Collaborated on a lot of stuff. I enjoyed working with Dusty immensely. Loved him, still love him. But we're not going to agree on everything. And my generation and his generation have tried to figure out a way that we can come to a middle ground, kind of like we do in a negotiation. My theory on the philosophy of wrestling, I believe there's antagonists and protagonists. Now, you can call them any other name you want. Good guy, bad guy. Babyface, heel, whatever you want to say. Same difference. It's the road team in the NFL. The road team are the heels. That's how I look at it.
Yep.
So no matter how you want to divide it or classify it or categorize it, any endeavor is going to have a fan favorite and some of that's not a fan favorite. Either they're going to be booed or they're going to be indifferent. And that's the worst thing you can do as a wrestler, to be Geneva, to be Switzerland, and be neutral. That ain't cool. That ain't going to get you no money. So I don't know, man. We're going to have some disagreements in that regard, but they'll be done respectfully, and they'll be done because he knows I love him, and he loves me, and I'm going to help him all I can. But there are some things that are going to be hard to be dislodged from philosophically. That would be like saying, do you still believe that blocking and tackling are the two key elements in football? Damn right I do. Yeah, what about the 5 wides? Wait a minute. There can't be 5 wides. Can there? Unless you got 12 guys on the field. You got to have 7 on the line of scrimmage. Whatever. You see what I'm saying? The game is the game. And I still believe in the heels and baby faces to some degree, without a doubt.
And something that Cody said for me as a fan that I got excited about, to go back to fundamentals, is he said that wins and losses will matter.
Yep.
And that's something I think that's gotten away from pro wrestling.
It speaks to the same premise that we talked about earlier today about time limits. A wrestling match that does not have a time limit is essentially an expose that we are Broadway. This is an entertainment entity. We're dancing a controlled physical dance. And by the way, we're doing our own stunts, but it is a controlled performance. I don't want that feel on the AEW. For me, I'm not sticking for the whole company. I'm sticking for me. I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I want to be a part of an athletic presentation that's dramatic because it's organic and it's real. It feels real, and that's kind of what I hope that we get. But it's going to be so exciting because here's the thing. Think about this, Bubba. Think about when you're a young pup. And some of these guys that they're going to give a chance to at AEW are they're unknown entities, right?
Yes.
And now they're going to have a chance to be on national television.
Yep.
With big time production, upcoming Maverick-like company with great energy and innovation, hopefully. And so I look at the gleam in their eye as part of my motivation. It's just cool as hell to see somebody else being able to do and experience these things for the first time like I did. It's like working in a garden.